Hi, welcome to another episode of Alta Heron. My name is Rob Runacres, and my friend Hans Jodelind will introduce tonight's guest.
Hello, yes, tonight we're going to talk to Dr. Daniel Jaquet, sitting in his crypt somewhere in Switzerland. Hi Daniel, how are you?
Hi, thank you for inviting me. I'm very fine. Sorry for the light. Living in a castle,
Yeah, you're going to have to explain the castle thing.
Okay, I'm a lucky guy. I just moved into a castle, but they don't really provide good lighting, and the food is terrible. But I'll survive.
Typical castles, isn't it? You know, bad lighting and bad.
You get some guy called Igor. He can't cook. You know, it's just awful.
Okay, tonight we're going to discuss your research in armored combat. So can you firstly outline what period and what sources you cover when it comes to armored combat?
Yes, I focus on the fight books, and there I chose to rely on everything that was armored related into the 15th and early 16th century fight books, which is basically, let's say from the early 15th century up until 1570s. So start with Fiore de Liberi and ends with the manuscript copies of Joachim Meyer. And geographically that means south and north of the Alps, mainly south of the Rhine.
Okay. Cool. And how long have you actually been researching this area?
I did my master thesis, the license, in 2005, and then I wanted to do more, and I wanted to do everything related with fight books, but I had to choose. So either you choose a particular set of fight books, or you choose a thematic approach, and I chose the thematic approach to look into everything that is armored related into this corpus. That was in 2006, and I actually got the armor for myself after a few experience in 2008. So I'd say I seriously investigated this with the armor since 2008.
Okay.
Okay, and what particular armor have you concentrated on?
I had to pick an armor that is representative of this corpus. So I looked at the illustrated part, and I had to choose. As I said, it spans over a period of 130 years. A bit difficult, so I chose where the first text, the authoritative texts were produced. That's mid-15th century, and I chose. I really had a hard time to pick a particular set of armor that was representative of this one. And my choice was made for an armor that is covering, if you believe the museum, realized around 452 near Nuremberg.
Okay, you said believe the museum. We talked about this a little bit earlier. Can you expand on that?
Yeah. Okay. So when you visit a museum, don't believe what is written. If you read an academic book, don't believe in what's written in it. This is, it's simple. People provide information, and sometimes they realize that sometimes they do a very good job. Sometimes, they don't. And the problem with museums, may they be big collections, huge national or international collections, or very small local museums, they have an amount of people working on this to do the actual research that is sometimes limited, or they rely on what has been done in the past, and they thrust into their institutional memory. And sometimes, if you look closely on a type of armor or a particular sword, you then have surprise. For example, I believed in the beginning when I had to choose the armor, I said I need an armor that is representative of the fight book corpus that stems from a particular period, probably, and that was attributed to a particular wearer. And with those conditions, I chose this one. And then when I actually investigated it, I figured out that actually it was something that was made as is in the early 18th century and modified several times in the 19th century. So pieces were interchanged, and we are really not sure that this armor was worn as such in the mid-15th century. And this is true for most of the weapons displayed all over the world.
Now, you say this, but again, when we were talking earlier, you mentioned that, of course, armor is interchangeable and it's used over a long period. So there's a difference between manufacture and the wearing of the armor. Could these antiquarians of the 18th century, 19th century have been making educated guesses which are near the truth?
Okay. So several things. First, if you want to put a date and a place, a provenience on an object, especially for arms and armor, you will face several problems or issues. What does your date means? Was it the time when it was produced? Was it the time when it was in use? Or when was it the time when it has been found in an archaeological context? And for this, well, it could change for 200 years sometimes, especially with swords. Armor is not really this, but okay. And the other problem you will face is that people tend to focus on this armor is for this particular use, when actually it's not really so in the 15th century. If we go to the top level of the society, if you were talking about Maserati, cars of course, then at that time you don't buy a car, you buy a set of cars and you change the pieces like options if you do tuning with cars. So these guys, when they were buying an armor, they were buying a set of pieces, sometimes 120 pieces, and they would change different pieces according to what they want to do. So the same armor, if you want to go for a campaign, if you want to go for a place where you will actually fight against other people, you will certainly not wear some of these fancy, very highly sophisticated armor type for jousting. Or if you know that you will fight on foot, you will wear different things that if you want to fight on horse. And if you want to go or to enter a chivalric games, well, let's call this tournaments, you will definitely not use the same armor.
Okay. But you have also researched wearing the armor and doing different things in them, like doing these physical stamina things in armor, and including obstacle races. Is this something? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Okay. I'm an academic, but I'm also a HEMA fighter, and I was training when I was little to become a knight. So the armor definitely has something, and it's not only to be studied as I don't know, through a glass or as an object. I had to actually experience with it, and when can I tell you a story?
Please do.
In the beginning of my research, I said, okay, I really want to actually try out those armors. And I sat in an office of by a very famous curator of arms and armor, and I said, well, dear sir, I won't put names here, I want to study the armor, and I want to experience with it. I want to test it. I want to test the mobility. I want to understand how you can actually move into those things. And he said, I can help you, but you have to become a student of the armor. What you will do is actually you will travel to the most important European collections of arms and armor, and you will go there not for one day, but you will stay there for a month, and you have to walk into those collections, and you find an armor that will appeal you, and you have to stare at it for 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, until you understand it, and then you leave and you come back.
Okay.
Did you do this?
No. No. No.
Can I ask you, Daniel? You were smoking a pipe earlier. What's in that pipe, really?
Sorry?
No, you were smoking a pipe earlier. Yeah, I just want to know what's in that pipe. Okay, but okay, go ahead.
But if you come, we can share.
Go ahead with the story, please.
So then I said to him, well, I want to understand how it moves, how it restricts movement, because when I study fight books, I can understand just by reading the text that the same arm lock is not done in armor the same way it is done without the armor. And why is that? Because the armor. So you have to understand this. So I want to test these armors. So how do I do that? And his answer was, but you cannot do this. And then when I met others, they said, well, maybe if you go to some of the restoration laboratory, you might have a closer look into some of those pieces, and you can. And I said, well, but I want to wear this. Oh, so it was a huge. This is questioning, okay, disciplinary approach, academic research, and so on. What I did actually is that I asked some friends who were reenactors, they had armors. So I said, hey guys, I'm starting a PhD project and I want to actually try to see how you move into those armors. So can you come over and we do some tests? And the first session, it was 3 guys there, and we broke 2 armors. When I mean we broke them, we actually broke them.
Historic armor.
Yeah. Well, okay. So most of these guys, they were reenactors, and what they want to have is something that looks like armor. And on the market, the highly pricey armor you could find at the time, the scene has a big change now, was someone trying to replicate the visual aspects and making sure it won't fall together when you actually wear it. But most of those people, they didn't actually do anything instead of parading in the streets or in their events. And we broke, even though one of those armor was tempered steel, but very bad steel, and we actually broke the cuirasse. So just by throwing the guy and putting on him, it broke. So at that point, I realized that I really needed something that was behaving like, not looking like. Well, now it is common nowadays to do this. You have a market for jousters. They want to experience the real thing, so they actually need an armor that works. But this is a bit difficult also to communicate with several people who want to engage about armored fighting. They want to start, so they put pieces together, not really understanding what they need to do this. And most of the time, it is not an easy job to actually put a suit together that would, well, behave like it should behave.
Do you feel, just to come back to the academic side, do you feel that this is something that HEMA really struggles with certain academics? Because it interests me, when I was a student studying archaeology, the Romanists were quite happy to use experimental archaeology. They would be looking at, say, mass production of arrows, or all of this sort of stuff. And this was, and particularly in the prehistoric eras, of course, where you don't have this written material, they were using experimental archaeology to do this. Do you feel that perhaps as we get later on in historical terms, and we've got these histories and that, the academics perhaps become, how can I put it, less open to the ideas of using this sort of experimental archaeology? Okay,
there are several criteria or forces here. The first one is, okay, for ancient history, they don't have a lot of sources, so they have to rely on the material culture mostly, and they have to make the most of it. So they need to actually do something about their source, which is also material. But this is not really what I do, or what we do with HEMA, I think. Experimental archaeology is a field that has a methodology, and usually what you do is that you have an object, you try to replicate the process into creating or using this object or the trace of its use, and then you compare to what you have in your experiment. How do you do this when this is a gesture or when this is a technical movement? You don't have data material to compare with. So I'm not sure it's really the same.
But I'm just wondering if we're in the early stages of this in HEMA. I mean, HEMA in many ways could be argued to be experimental archaeology. We are trying to recreate, not really reenact. We're trying to recreate combat in various areas. We just don't. What we have is enthusiastic amateurs at the moment, and not what some people would call academics.
Yeah, well, I will disagree. I think that what I've seen in the communities, some of the research being done is way better than old academics doing research on their in their office or libraries. The results.
Well, I'd agree with that.
Yeah. Coming back to what you said, maybe we have to be careful about words. You use reconstruct, revive. No, you didn't use revive, maybe on purpose.
No, I certainly wouldn't want to go down that route. No.
Okay. Let's say that for my studies, I chose to use several different disciplinary approach, and I think that, well, classical history is not really getting answers where I want to have answers. And okay, let's compare this not with experimental archaeology, because I would argue that it's not the same process, since at the end you don't compare with archaeological data at the end of your experiment. Let's call this dance research, for example. The dancer is fantastic. The dance research didn't exist in the 60s. It was nowhere to be found. It's not a research field. It's not a recognized field of research in academia. Took them 25 years to get a professor in a chair into research dance. It was the first chair was done in 92, when the first monograph happened in 1960. And they faced the same issues. They had technical literature. They had practitioners. Some of the academics, they say, well, but this is not serious research what is being done by the communities of practitioners. But at some point, some of the voices into academia said, well, you should bring a gap. You should bring amateur researchers, as they call them, working together with academics in order to actually foster the field. And I think we are going this road. It's not really easy. And yes, for this, we are in a very early stage. As long as I experience writing research projects and so on, I don't have any institutional support. Maybe I should have listened to colleagues and said, well, go to the US and do this in the US, you will get your money and your thing. Possibly.
What kind of attention have you got outside of the HEMA community when it comes to these obstacle races?
We didn't talk about the obstacle. We mentioned it and we didn't talk about it.
Perhaps to come back a bit, perhaps if you could just say why you're doing the obstacle race, and then perhaps answer Hans's question.
Yeah, and what have you found also, because it's a part of your research, of course, to do these obstacle races. So, yeah, talk a little bit more about that.
Okay. So since the beginning, when I will start a bit earlier then. When I was experimenting with other people's gear, and I said I really need an armor, a good one. And when I looked at the prices, the first price that was given to me is 60,000 euros for a suit. I said, no way I can actually have this. And I had colleagues, the physicists, people, mathematicians, biologists, and they said, well, he was a PhD student, and he said, well, I had to do this experiment today for my PhD, and it cost me, it cost the institution 20,000 Swiss francs, which is about the same in euros. So, okay, so if you can get that amount of money, maybe I can also go there. And a lot of my colleagues, people in France, they say, you will never get the university to pay your armor. No way you can do this. Well, it took me 2 years. But yeah. And this is funny because it engages people's minds. Well, this is sexy, this is the knightly armor, the prince, the blah, blah, blah. So it's easy for me to get either funding or research project because it attracts light. It is something a bit particular and so on. So I a bit surfed on the wave with this. And I said in the beginning, from the beginning on, I don't want my work to be focused or intended only to the academic world. Nobody will buy these books, very expensive book and so on. So I decided to do what we say in French, we say vulgarisation scientifique. In English, I think it's public engagement project. So engage with the public. And we did this first video for an exhibition in Paris in 2011 with very, very little financial mean. I had to pay for this video, hoping that the museum will buy it. And this video made 2 million views on YouTube. Wow. So at some point we had some reach. Yeah. Even with that success, I was always willing to make another one. And the project started 3 years ago, and we didn't get the funding. And it was very sad. So again, we had to do this video, the one that we released in June for an exhibition in Switzerland. And this one, the first month on YouTube, it got 300,000 views. And wow. All of my friends said, "Oh, come on, you have some reach there. You have to make a Kickstarter." I said, "Oh." Okay, so it's a bit a change of line because my line was I do this for science and public engagement. So that means that all of my project needs to be connected at some point with an academic institution or a museum, patrimonial institution. And they said, "Well, but you don't care. Just do your thing. Do another Kickstarter now, because otherwise you will lose the people." So this obstacle run thing. Well, the idea is there since 2 or 3 years, but we actually realized it in 1 month, including the Kickstarter thing. And it will also be displayed in the museum, but it was not actually something that was planned. And we got success, we got the funding, and we did the race 2 weeks ago now. It was fun, and the goal was to actually have striking image, because people, the audience, they can rely or they can connect with the image of a fireman and its equipment and loads. Same with the soldier, but not really with the knight. But actually, they were about the same equipment. So that was the idea behind this video, showing that the knight moves actually as good or even better as the modern soldier or the modern firefighter. And well, I cannot really display the results now, but
well, that will come. But does this tie back to when you were looking some years ago at running in armor? And yeah. So I remember you giving a lecture in Dijon where you ran in full armor, you ran in sports kits, and then you had to run naked as well and be measured to basically show the effects of armor on the Constitution.
Yeah, the idea is to use established protocols with sports scientists, tests that they do every day with athletes to measure the energy expenditure and so on. So this is established, and to just put, instead of an athlete, just me with the armor. And when I did that, I had no funding. I just knocked on the door and said, "I want to do this. How much will it cost me? And they said, "Well, we don't care about funding money. It's just so exciting. Come on, let's do it." Yeah, so what we did actually is we wanted to compare or to measure the impact of the suit or the gear onto my mobility and my energy expenditure. This is funny because a lot of people say, scholars as well as reenactors or even people in the HEMA community, they have this idea that you are impaired with the suit, impaired in some ways. So if we want also now to go with people in Battle of Nations and so on, they say, well, historical armor sometimes. So I will not put names, but I can quote them out of my head. They say, well, if we want to be more historical, we have more problems, so we tend to mix species in order to get better mobility. And I would argue that it is only a lack of research because or investigating the wrong type of suit, because you do get incredible mobility. When I first looked on the results, so we did those, I will give an example. We measured with 3D motion capture the gait analysis. So I just walked with the piece and naked with the garment under it and with the suit. And when I first looked on the computer on the screen with the data, something was weird. I had movement that were greater in armor than without. And I said to the scientist, I said, oh, this is wrong. Something went wrong. We have to redo the test. And she said, no way. No, our tests are never wrong. And actually, it was because of the extra load of the armor. So the flexion extension of the foot was greater because of the weight. So that means that without doing nothing, what they call natural movements, you have greater mobility in armor than without.
Okay, and, fantastic.
And sometimes, okay, of course, you also have impairment. So what I measured with those tests was about, so in just doing the gait analysis or walking and running, it's about a difference in degrees. It's 2.48, so nothing. And what we did is also measuring what they call functional movement. So you test all of your movement in all of the directions of all of your joints. And there we had an average difference of 11, which is not really high, but it is still high. And some of those were highly impaired. Like, okay, the flexion extension of this one was highly impaired, like 60% impaired. But other movements on the same joint was not impaired. So abduction and adduction of this one was not impaired. And this one you would need in fighting. This one you will not, because it exposes one of weakness. And one of my ongoing research is that to actually investigate if those impairment was actually part of the design. And this is what I believe.
All right, so to be clear, what we're saying is that the armor is ensuring that you don't put yourself in a situation that would mean you get harmed.
Yes. Yes. Thank you for rephrasing. For example, we had the full extension of the elbow is limited, but it's limited, according to me, because you don't want your elbow to be broken. So you don't limit this because it's a material problem. You cannot. No, it's part of the design. You don't want to move that far because otherwise your armor would break. Well, okay, the joint would break. The armor prevents your joint to be broken.
That's fantastic. So that's actually providing almost something like a crustacean that's keeping something in together. So I presume if you hyperextend, it's going to prevent that and acts as a cushion. Okay. So we talked about the armor and why you've done these things. Some of them are obviously look fantastic. There's serious academia behind it, and I guess you're comparing normal mobility with armored mobility. But what about the physical conditions according to diets? I mean, did you look at the dietary background of people who are wearing this? I mean, one argument that's been used in the past is that some people, these people were superhuman fighters at the top, and yet we know that their diet wasn't so good, and they were they had limited access to some nutrition. So did you look at this at all?
Okay, the source material, the research you are talking about is it about medieval period or is it later, like 16th, 17th, 18th century?
Well, the period I know is about the 16th century and later, for instance, where you have the griping pains because people are eating meat and they're not eating vegetables because it's seen as, common, basically.
The problem is that studying or investigating diets needs that you should have a specific kind of written document that allows you to do so. I would argue that some of the studies that are around are not really representative, or only representative of a specific kind of people. But I would say, I would just evade the question by quoting this or telling this. I do not claim to represent what a fighter back then was like. Like, I smoke. I probably have a really bad diet, and most of my time I spend in the library or typing into my goddamn computer. So I'm not sure I'm really representative of this. Not only the diet, but actually the daily routine, and also the way that I walk and so on. But the scholars, they are very clever people. Usually, when they know they are doing something wrong, they have an excuse for it. So my excuse for not being representative of a subject of the 15th century is that my experiments or my attempts are limited because of this, and the way to have an actual pool of data is how do you say that? Replicating on a large pool of experimenters in order to focus this. But what it will show is nothing. So it's a dream to actually try to get close to them. We cannot do this. We can only go towards this. Now, not the diet. I've not investigated the diet because of lack of source material and good research, according to my evaluation and to those of other colleagues. But what I know for sure is that if I put my armor on you and I ask you to run, you will run probably less easier, or it would be more difficult for you to run with it. You might, but your body is not accustomed to the suit. The first thing I did is trying to get my body accustomed to the suit. When I got that, I said I have to wear it for 4 hours a day for all my life. Of course, it didn't go through. Like, you cannot put the armor yourself. So I'll let you imagine how tired my wife was to put the armor every day and to see me, I don't know, doing stupid things at home with this suit. So I did not wear it for a long time, like 4 hours a day, but for a consequent period of time. And I still wear it as much as I can, because I can, even for a short period, I can see how my body changes while wearing it. And I think this is critical. When I'm invited to teach in reenactment groups or HEMA groups that are actually focused on armor fighting, my first question to the people is how often do you wear your armor? Because if they wear it for a session like 4 times a year, they do big weekends and they sweat in it, it's not enough. It's definitely not enough. And the other question I usually ask to people that want to fight with me in armor, say, oh great, can I fight with you? I said, yes, of course you can fight with me, but we will start with a wrestling match. Because what I can see is that usually people with suits of armor, they don't like to be in the position where they could actually damage their suits. Mm-hmm. And they don't practice this. And if you don't practice this, you can really, if you don't practice wrestling in armor, you cannot practice sword with armor or lance or axe.
Can I ask you something? You said that you felt that your body changed when you were wearing the armor. Can you be a little bit more specific? When you wore the armor, when you wore it the most of the time, how did your body change? I mean, what kind of muscle groups did change? How did your posture change? Can you be a little bit more specific?
Yes. Rob was referring to experimental archaeology before. All studies involving experiments, they always go in circles. So you try something, you suddenly you try to better or improve your experiment. And most of the things that I can remember wearing it the first time was, okay, this hurts here, or this hurts here, or something is wrong. So you have to change this. And most of it will rely either of question of adjustment of the gear or about the clothing you wear under it. And now at my 7 version of the arming doublet, as it is called. So this is one. The other thing is to go back to your question, what about my body? I noticed that some parts strengthen or are, for example, this part hurts a lot in the beginning because I was not adjusting it correctly. And this part gets tougher and tougher and tougher. And then at some points you don't feel the pain anymore. Your body just avoids this by building extra things, muscles or other tissues and so on. So this is one. But also your brain understands the shifts of center of gravity. So in the beginning you are a bit clumsy in it, and then as long as you carry it, then you become less and less clumsy because you are accustomed to it. And the really cutting-edge discovery I made, or some people did this discovery before me, but they did not write about, and I didn't even wrote about it correctly. So this is on my to-do list. But I don't know if you have seen a lot of those 15th century pictures, especially when the people are naked. You can really, their waistline is restricted. Mm-hmm. Like, okay, you say it's fashion, but it's not only fashion. I think that their body, especially the people that wear military clothing, they wear like dancers. How do you say that in English? Corset?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you want the armor to be correctly adjusted, if I stand here, you can still see me. So we wear now the pants too low. The actual waistline is way here. And in order to have the first people who actually studied armor in the late 19th century, they said, well, the people were smaller because the waistline is so restricted. But actually, it's part of the process. I think their body were shaped with this because of their garments, because this was restricted to allow better movements, but also to allow the armor to sit correctly on it. When I put my arming doublet, my waistline is restricted by 6 centimeters. So if you wear this every day, over a long period of time, your body will change, definitely.
So for the shaping, the shaping the armor is going on, do you think that I mean, we have some idea that there may have been, through dancing and other things, education through posture that's going on. Do you feel that there was any form of shaping that was going on in clothing for young people, and as they were growing, before they were getting to armored stage?
Before answering your question, we should do more research.
Yeah.
To have a straightforward, of course, this is the classical answer. But I think it is worth investigating. I think that this idea about fashion maids, or how do you say that? That fashion implies or is made because of military endeavors or needs, or reverse. And I think that's definitely, I will not answer or go into this, but their clothing and the way that they were moving, eating and so on actually has a huge impact on their body. And this is a problem that all EMA researchers should more investigate about. And I'm pretty sure it's really interesting. But how to actually do this? Well, just pay us to experiment. Since childhood, I have 2 children, and go.
Yes, everybody, let's shape Daniel's children into him. Yeah, that's great. Okay.
Okay, I think we're drawing to an end. I do have a question for you though. Where do you feel research within HEMA and perhaps HEMA fighting should really take armoured combat? Because there are obviously certain academic interests that you have in it, which I think HEMA people would probably like to take forward. Is there anything, without wanting to put you too much on the spot, is there anything in particular you'd like to see more of within armoured combat in HEMA?
Yeah, well, get some financing and get good gear. Because I think the gear is really a key question. If you want to actually do cutting edge research and you don't have access to gear that will allow you to do this, you should find a way to get you good armor. Good armor means nothing like it must look like what you have in the museum. It must be tailor fitted to you according to intelligent design and typology that would fit to actually what you do. And this is really not easy because information publication about this is really restricted, really difficult. So what I would to see more in the community about armor fighting is people with good armor.
Yeah, we interviewed Jess Finley a while ago, who's very interested on armoured combat, and she was suggesting this. I know Bill Frisbee's very much on this. However, in discussion before we had the main interview, you mentioned that we're talking about the top end of armour, the absolute. Well, you mentioned Maserati, the top end, and much of the armour that's being used at the time, of course, is borrowed, stolen, whatever, and put together in a hodgepodge manner. Yes. So can we really be saying that we're actually looking at how people fought in the day if we're trying to do it through the absolute excellence, the top end?
Okay, this is very good remark. I'd say that if you want to focus on fight books, then you should understand what they were wearing, and what is depicted is princely armor. So you should go into this. Now, if you want to do something else, you should take bits and pieces and investigate into another way and question yourself whether you want to investigate fight books, techniques with fighting to reenact modern, well, not modern, but ancient commoners fighting with armor. This is possible, but it's not the same gear. It is true.
Well, we've got many levels. I mean, we're not talking about necessarily the top level and then right the way down to the bottom level. Mm-hmm. We're talking about the poorer nobility, the the upper middle classes, mercantile classes, who are not going to have the access to the absolute. They would surely have some access to fight books. Mm-hmm. They're just going to be limited by their standard of equipment.
Of course, but then you should. I think then you should not try to have a replica of those princely armors, but you should understand how they were thought, because they were models then. Some things did not change, like if your armor is not shaped and allow you to actually move into it correctly, you cannot fight. And people back then, as you know, they were not stupid, and if they, then you just have to understand. What are your needs, and how could you compose your equipment into an intelligent manner? And this is actually what most of the people do. But I would say if you want to strictly study fight book techniques, then you should take a good gear.
Okay, Daniel, thank you very, very much. Now we will let you go and fix the lighting in your castle.
and hopefully get a better servant than the hunchback.
Yeah. If only I could.
All right. Daniel Jaquet, thank you very much.
Thank you guys.
Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.